pray be. Oh, I earnestly beseech the Almighty that to him be all the glory. Should this humble sermon serve to guide but one lost soul to Christ, verily, it shall be deemed a triumph of the highest order. If its sole achievement be to shepherd you nearer to his embrace, then, indeed, it is a venture well worthy. And should it fail to kindle a light in the darkness, may the burden of this fruitless endeavor rest upon my shoulders, a testament to my unworthy efforts in his service. Every good gift, every perfect gift, it comes from above, from the Father of lights. My friends, all that we have, every bit of it, we must trace back to the Almighty, the giver of all good. Have talents been bestowed upon you? They're given by God himself, the God of all talents, time, wealth, influence, power. They're entrusted to you, not for your glory, but for his. Can you move people with your words? Can you think deep thoughts that stir the soul? Whether you're a poet, a statesman, or a philosopher, remember this: they are not yours alone. They are lent to you from on high. No man, no woman, has anything of their own, except their sins. And so, with humble hearts, we acknowledge the source of all our gifts. We own nothing, but we are given everything by God. We're simply caretakers here. God has given us a place in his creation and told us, do your part until I return. Even if our efforts bring great results, we must remember that all we work on ultimately belongs to God. Whether we gain a little or a lot from our efforts, it's important to recognize that everything above our basic needs is a gift from him. Our abilities and how we use them should honor God, the one who gave them to us. This message is clear in the parable of the talents. It teaches us that our abilities are entrusted to us by God. Even the man in the parable who just buried his talent in the ground acknowledged it belonged to his master. His response, though disrespectful, wasn't a denial of this truth. He understood something crucial that many miss. Our talents and resources are obligations from God. It's a pity to see people who dismiss the idea of answering to God, spending their lives in defiance rather than service. If only we could all grasp and act on this truth. Everything we have is a gift from God. Now consider this. Not everyone has the same amount of talent or resources. Like in the parable, some have more, some less. Today, I want to speak especially to those with fewer talents. Remind us all that we're accountable for whatever we have, and offer the comforting thought that using what we have wisely is what truly matters. It's not about how much we have, but how we use it. If we use our talents well, we can stand with a clear conscience, knowing we've done our best with what we were given. First, then, God has made some men with few talents. You very often hear men speak of one another as if God had made no mental differences at all. One man finds himself successful, and he supposes that if everyone else could have been as industrious and as persevering as himself, everyone must necessarily have been as successful. You will often hear remarks against ministers who are godly and earnest men, but who do not happen to have much attracting power. And they are called drones and lazy persons, because they cannot make much of a stir in the world. Whereas the reason may be that they have but little talent and are making the best use of what they have, and therefore ought not to be rebuked for the littleness of what they are able to accomplish. It is a fact which every man must see, that even in our birth there is a difference. All children are not alike precocious, and all men certainly are not alike capable of learning or of teaching. God hath made eminent and marvelous differences. We are not to suppose that all the difference between a Milton and a man who lives and dies without being able to read has been caused by education. There was doubtless a difference originally. And though education will do much, it cannot do everything, till it will necessarily bring forth more than the best till it is stati, the soil of which is hard and sterile, God has made great and decided differences, and we ought, in dealing with our fellow men, to recollect this, lest we should say harsh things of those very men to whom God will afterwards say, "Well done, good and faithful servant." But why is it that God has not given to all men like talents? My first answer shall be, because God is a sovereign. And of all attributes, next to his love, God is the most fond of displaying his sovereignty. The Lord God will have men know that he has a right to do what he wills with his own. Hence it is that in salvation he gives it to some and not to others. And his only reply to any accusation of injustice is, "Nay, but, O man, who art thou that repliest against God? Shall the thing formed say to him that formed it, Why hast thou made me thus?" The worm is not to murmur because God did not make it an angel. And the fish that swims the sea must not complain because it hath not wings to fly into the highest heavens. God had a right to make his creatures just what he pleased. And though men may dispute his right, he will hold and keep it inviolate against all comers, that he may hedge his right about and make vain man acknowledge it. In all his gifts he continually reminds us of his sovereignty. "I will give to this man," he says, "a mind so acute that he shall pry into all secrets. I will make another so obtuse, that none but the plainest elements of knowledge shall ever be attainable by him. I will give to one man such a wealth of imagination, that he shall pile mountain upon mountain of imagery, till his language seems to reach to celestial majesty. I will give to another man a soul so dull, that he shall never be able to originate a poetic thought." Why this, O God? The answer comes back. Shall I not do what I will with mine own? So, then, the children being not yet born, neither having done good or evil, that the purpose of God according to election might stand, it was written, "The elder shall serve the younger." And so it is, written concerning men, that one of them shall be greater than another, one shall bow his neck, and the other put his foot upon it. For the Lord hath a right to dispose of places and of gifts, of talents and wealth, just as seemeth good in his sight. Now, most men quarrel with this. But mark, the thing that you complain of in God is the very thing that you love in yourselves. Every man likes to feel that he has a right to do with his own as he pleases. We all like to be little sovereigns. You will give your money freely and liberally to the poor, but if any man should impertinently urge that he had a claim upon your charity, would you give unto him? Certainly not. And who shall impeach the greatness of your generosity in so doing? It is even as that parable that we have in one of the evangelists, where after the men had toiled, some of them 12 hours, some of them 6, and some of them but 1, the Lord gave every man a penny. Oh, I would meekly bow my head and say, "My Lord, hast thou given me 1 talent? Then I bless thee for it, and I pray thee bestow upon me grace to use it rightly. Hast thou given to my brother 10 talents? I thank thee for the greatness of thy kindness towards him, but I neither envy him nor complain of thee." Oh, for a spirit that bows always before the sovereignty of God. Again, God gives to one 5 and to another 2 talents, because the Creator is a lover of variety. It was said that order is heaven's first law. Surely variety is the second, for in all God's works there is the most beautiful diversity. Look ye towards the heavens at night. All the stars shine not with the same brilliance, nor are they placed in straight lines, like the lamps of our streets. Then turn your eyes below. See in the vegetable world how many great distinctions there are, ranging from the cedar of Lebanon to the hyssop on the wall, or the moss that is smaller still. See how from the huge mammoth tree, that seems as if beneath its branches it might shade an army, down to the tiny lichen, God hath made everything beautiful, but everything full of variety. Look on any one tree, if you please. See how every leaf differs from its fellow, how even the little tiny buds that are at this hour bursting, at the scent of the approaching perfume of spring, differ from each other, not 2 of them alike. Look again upon the animated world. God hath made every creature like unto another. How wide the range, from the colossal elephant to the coney that burrows in the rock, from the whale that makes the deep hoary with its lashings to the tiny minnow that skims the brook. God hath made all things different, and we see variety everywhere. I doubt not it is the same, even in heaven, for there are thrones and dominions and principalities and powers, different ranks of angels perhaps, rising tier upon tier. One star differeth from another star in glory. And why should not the same rule stand good in manhood? Doth God cast us all in the same mould? It seems not so, for he hath not made our faces alike. No two countenances can be said to be exactly the same. For if there be some likeness, yet is there a manifest diversity. Should minds, then, be alike? Should souls all be cast in the same fashion? Should God's creation dwindle down into a great manufactory, in which everything is melted in the same fire and poured into the same mould? No. For variety's sake, he will have one man a renowned David, and another David's unknown armor-bearer. He will have one man a Jeremy, who shall prophesy, and another a Baruch, who shall only read the prophecy. One shall be rich as Dives, another poor as Lazarus. One shall speak with a voice loud as thunder, another shall be dumb. One shall be mighty in word and doctrine, another shall be feeble in speech and slow in words. God will have variety, and the day will come when, looking down upon the world, we shall see the beauty of its history, to be mightily indebted to the variety of the characters that entered into it. Our second point is crucial. Even a few talents must be accounted for. We often think that Judgment Day will primarily concern those with great power or notoriety. Imagine historical figures like Napoleon. Men of immense ability, shaping nations, causing widespread upheaval. We might think their judgment before God must be intense. The thought is that their high-profile actions affecting millions would lead to a more severe accounting. But here's the key: we'll all stand in judgment. Regardless of our social stature or the breadth of our influence, we've all been under the divine's observation, and we are accountable for our actions, big or small. This leads to a common misconception. Some believe that because they haven't led revolutions or caused large-scale harm, their judgment will be lighter. I'm no instigator of major upheavals, one might say. My errors were minor, mostly unnoticed, confined to my immediate circle. But reducing our visibility doesn't reduce our responsibility. Having fewer talents means they should be simpler to manage and utilize effectively. The one with many talents might argue that managing them all is a challenge. But with just one, it's straightforward. If you live and die without using even that single talent, your guilt is magnified. The logic is clear. If little was asked of you, why not fulfill even that small ask? Consider a tenant renting a small house. If their rent is modest, reflecting the size or simplicity of the property, not paying it is even more inexcusable. It's the same with our talents. You might think your contribution is too minor to matter, but in God's judgment, every bit counts. Every one of us, regardless of our talent's size, will have to account for how we've used it. But why does God give some just a couple of talents and others many? It's about filling various roles. Imagine an ocean. It's home to both the massive whale and the tiny fish, each occupying different spaces. The same is true in a forest. If every bird was an eagle, who would sing on the smaller branches? God creates each creature, each person, to fit their unique space. He's always efficient. A person meant to lead a small community doesn't need the skills of a world leader. A parent teaching their children at home doesn't need the talents of a global influencer. The size of our talents often matches the size of our roles. Furthermore, God often displays His grace through those with fewer talents. Picture a highly educated minister drawing large crowds. People might credit his success to his eloquence and knowledge. But then, Consider a person with simple speech and modest learning. Yet, they speak with heartfelt sincerity. Under their words, many find transformation. Critics might dismiss them. "I see no reason for all this," they say. The person is uneducated, even crude. But in the church, we see God's glory shining through their simplicity. This must be God's work, we declare, because it's not about human ability. So, through the small and the simple, God often achieves the greatest wonders. In conclusion, our talents, big or small, are all given to us for a purpose. They are not just for our own benefit, but for the betterment of the world around us. Each of us, regardless of the number of talents, will face a day of reckoning. It will consider not just the magnitude of our actions, but their quality and intent. Whether endowed with numerous talents or just a few, the expectation remains the same: to use them wisely, responsibly, and for the greater good. In this understanding, we find a deeper appreciation for our individual roles and responsibilities, no matter how grand or humble they may appear. Remember, as a listener, your judgment day will be deeply personal. God won't question you about your church's actions. He'll ask about your own actions. Take, for example, a Sunday school. If God judged church members collectively, they might collectively claim, "We had an excellent Sunday school with many teachers." But that's not how it works. Each church member will stand before God individually. "What did you contribute to the Sunday school?" God might ask. "I blessed you with a talent for teaching children. How did you use it?" "But Lord, there was a Sunday school," isn't a valid response. The question is, what did you personally do? Your judgment won't be about the group you were part of, but about your individual actions. Then someone might say, "Well, there were numerous initiatives for supporting clergy. I attended large gatherings and felt part of a greater effort." Again, the question will be, what did you personally contribute? You will be held accountable for your own resources, your own abilities. "I'm glad to see there's more preaching nowadays. Churches seem more active," another might add. But the focus here is not on what others are doing, but on your personal efforts. If you're a minister, have you intensified your efforts? Remember, it's not about your peers' actions, but your own that will be scrutinized at God's judgment seat. Every individual will face this probing question: what have you done with your talent? Your affiliation with churches, groups, or movements won't count for much. What's crucial is your personal service and commitment to God. If others are negligent, if others fail to fulfill their duties to God, that's all the more reason for you to have been extra diligent in your own efforts. The expectation is clear: personal action, personal responsibility. It's about what you, as an individual, have done to serve and honor God. So, let this be a reminder. Your contribution to the world, to your community, to your faith, isn't just a collective responsibility. It's a personal one. In a world where collective actions often overshadow individual efforts, it's easy to feel like our individual contributions don't matter, but they do. Especially in the spiritual realm, where every act of kindness, every moment of teaching, and every personal sacrifice is noted and valued. Your personal journey, your personal faithfulness, and your personal stewardship of the talents you've been given, these are the measures by which you will be judged. Reflect deeply on this. In the day of judgment, your account will be incredibly personal. Every action, every word, every decision will be under scrutiny. This isn't about a hurried overview or a collective judgment. It's a detailed, itemized accounting of your life. You may wonder, can this be substantiated? Absolutely. Consider the biblical assertion, "For every idle word that man shall speak, he shall be brought into account at the day of judgment." This indicates a level of detail that encompasses even the smallest of our actions and words. Often, we tend to view our lives in broad strokes. We may think, overall, I've lived a decent life. But it's the minutiae, the everyday choices and words that form the crux of our moral ledger. It's these little moments, these seemingly insignificant decisions, that collectively shape the trajectory of our existence. Just as countless tiny shells form vast chalk hills, so too do our small daily actions accumulate to define our life's journey. Each of these will be examined, questioned, and accounted for. That hour you had to spare, the words you chose to speak, the way you used your talents, all these will be dissected and evaluated. This calls for a deep, introspective wisdom. It's not enough to just glance at the broader picture of your life. Each component, each small deed or word, needs to harmonize with your overarching values and beliefs. Otherwise, the symphony of your life could turn out to be a jarring, discordant cacophony. This is particularly poignant for those living without a conscious awareness of God. Their lives, a tapestry of these myriad tiny actions, might inevitably lead to a harsh verdict under the penetrating gaze of the final judgment. Moreover, this account will be thorough, leaving no stone unturned. Some might dismiss their minor missteps as inconsequential, not worth their attention. But in God's comprehensive review, every action, no matter how small, will be scrutinized. This examination will delve into the deepest recesses of our hearts. Every small sin, every minor transgression will be exposed and weighed. Another crucial aspect is the absolute impartiality of this judgment. There will be no special consideration for rank, status, or position. From the mightiest ruler to the humblest citizen, all will stand on equal footing before God. The prince will be held to the same standard as his servant. The actions of the influential will be judged alongside those of the unnoticed. And it's not just about what we did, but how we did it, why we did it, and the impact of our actions. Our public facades, the masks we wear, will be irrelevant. The most respected individuals, if found to be hypocrites, will face the same stringent examination as the most notorious sinners. In this impending trial, no bias, no prejudice, no external influence can sway the judgment. It will be based solely on the evidence of our lives, the tangible proof of our deeds and intentions. This stark reality becomes even more daunting when we consider those without the redemptive advocacy of Christ. The great advocate, through his sacrifice, offers acquittal for his followers. His imputed merits provide a shield against the otherwise inevitable condemnation. But for those outside this grace, the judgment day looms as an insurmountable challenge. It brings to mind the words of an old preacher: "When the law was given, Mount Sinai smoked and trembled. But when the punishment of the law is administered, the entire earth will quake with fear. For who can endure the day of the Lord, the day of God's fierce wrath?" In conclusion, as we contemplate our existence and prepare for this ultimate accounting, it's essential to recognize the weight of our every action. The small, the large, the visible, and the hidden, all will be brought to light. This isn't about inducing fear, but about inspiring a mindful, purposeful way of living. A life where every moment is lived with an awareness of its significance, every word spoken with consideration of its impact. As we navigate the complexities of our daily lives, let's be mindful that each choice, each action, no matter how small, contributes to the legacy we leave behind. The final point to consider is this: if by divine grace, and it's only by divine grace that this can be achieved, our fewer talents are used rightly, not having more won't be a disadvantage. Imagine a renowned church leader passing away, someone who stood at the forefront, championing the truth. The likes of Calvin or Luther, celebrated for their immense talents and faithfulness. Yes, their heavenly welcome would be grand. But think of the humble village pastor. His congregation may be small, perhaps 50 souls. Yet he labors for them as if it's his life's mission. Hours spent in prayer, using every ounce of ability to guide them towards Christ. Would his entrance into heaven be any less triumphant than Luther's? Absolutely not. God's rewards are not based on the volume of resources entrusted, but on the fidelity shown towards them. The one faithful with less is equally honored as the one faithful with much. Let's delve into this idea. The man with 2 talents approaches his Lord with as much confidence as the one with 5. Lord, you gave me 2 talents. See, I've gained 2 more, he declares. He might often have envied his neighbor with more talents. Oh, how I wish I could accomplish as much as him. He might have thought, he can do so much with his 5 talents. Look at the interest he accumulates every year. He might have longed for greater abilities, greater opportunities to serve. Reviewing his life, he might have felt his achievements were modest compared to others. Just a few added to the church, while others have added hundreds, he might lament. Perhaps in heaven I'll just slip in quietly, while others enter boldly, reaping their harvest. But this is where faith needs to be stronger. At life's end, through grace, you can feel as confident dying with well-utilized fewer talents as someone with many. When you face your final moments, you'll find solace in Christ's complete covering. Reflecting on your life, you can say, I did what I could for him. I trust he'll forgive my shortcomings. In your humility and quiet service, there's a richer commendation in your conscience. Your deeds, though not celebrated publicly, were sincere and dedicated to God, not self-aggrandizement. Let's not forget the many unsung heroes in our midst. Countless evangelists and city missionaries working tirelessly with little recognition. Their dedication to Christ surpasses the quest for fame. Their deeds, though often unseen and unacknowledged, hold immense value in God's eyes. These faithful servants, toiling in obscurity, embody true devotion. Their reward, though not earthly, is eternally secure. This brings us to a profound realization. In God's kingdom, the measure of success isn't the magnitude of our talents, but the sincerity and faithfulness with which we use them. Whether you have 2 talents or 5, your worth isn't diminished by the number. It's magnified by your faithfulness. Each person, in their unique capacity, contributes to the grand tapestry of God's plan. Our lesser talents, when used rightly, can have an impact just as significant as those with greater ones. In summary, the heavenly reckoning isn't about comparing our achievements with others. It's about evaluating how we've used what we've been given. The village pastor, the unseen missionary, the quiet worker in the background, all play an integral role. Their faithful stewardship, though often overlooked on earth, is recognized and honored in heaven. So, let us be encouraged. Whether we're called to lead large congregations or to serve in quieter, less noticeable roles, our service is valuable. It's the heart, the commitment, the faithfulness that counts. In the divine economy, every effort, no matter how small, is essential. Our responsibility is to use our talents, however few, to the best of our ability. And in doing so, we find that in God's eyes, we are just as valuable as those entrusted with more. The final point to consider is this: if by divine grace, and it's only by divine grace that this can be achieved, our fewer talents are used rightly, not having more won't be a disadvantage. Imagine a renowned church leader passing away, someone who stood at the forefront, championing the truth. The likes of Calvin or Luther celebrated for their immense talents and faithfulness. Yes, their heavenly welcome would be grand. But think of the humble village pastor. His congregation may be small, perhaps 50 souls, yet he labors for them as if it's his life's mission. Hours spent in prayer, using every ounce of ability to guide them towards Christ. Would his entrance into heaven be any less triumphant than Luther's? Absolutely not. God's rewards are not based on the volume of resources entrusted, but on the fidelity shown towards them. The one faithful with less is equally honored as the one faithful with much. Let's delve into this idea. The man with 2 talents approaches his Lord with as much confidence as the one with 5. Lord, you gave me 2 talents. See, I've gained 2 more, he declares. He might often have envied his neighbor with more talents. Oh, how I wish I could accomplish as much as him, he might have thought. He can do so much with his 5 talents. Look at the interest he accumulates every year. He might have longed for greater abilities, greater opportunities to serve. Reviewing his life, he might have felt his achievements were modest compared to others. Just a few added to the church, while others have added hundreds, he might lament. Perhaps in heaven I'll just slip in quietly, while others enter boldly, reaping their harvest. But this is where faith needs to be stronger. At life's end, through grace, you can feel as confident dying with well-utilized fewer talents as someone with many. When you face your final moments, you'll find solace in Christ's complete covering. Reflecting on your life, you can say, I did what I could for him. I trust he'll forgive my shortcomings. In your humility and quiet service, there's a richer commendation in your conscience. Your deeds, though not celebrated publicly, were sincere and dedicated to God, not self-aggrandizement. Let's not forget the many unsung heroes in our midst. Countless evangelists and city missionaries working tirelessly with little recognition. Their dedication to Christ surpasses the quest for fame. Their deeds, though often unseen and unacknowledged, hold immense value in God's eyes. These faithful servants, toiling in obscurity, embody true devotion. Their reward, though not earthly, is eternally secure. This brings us to a profound realization. In God's kingdom, the measure of success isn't the magnitude of our talents, but the sincerity and faithfulness with which we use them. Whether you have 2 talents or 5, your worth isn't diminished by the number. It's magnified by your faithfulness. Each person, in their unique capacity, contributes to the grand tapestry of God's plan. Our lesser talents, when used rightly, can have an impact just as significant as those with greater ones. In summary, the heavenly reckoning isn't about comparing our achievements with others. It's about evaluating how we've used what we've been given. The village pastor, the unseen missionary, the quiet worker in the background, all play an integral role. Their faithful stewardship, though often overlooked on earth, is recognized and honored in heaven. So, let us be encouraged. Whether we're called to lead large congregations or to serve in quieter, less noticeable roles, our service is valuable. It's the heart, the commitment, the faithfulness that counts. In the divine economy, every effort, no matter how small, is essential. Our responsibility is to use our talents, however few, to the best of our ability. And in doing so, we find that in God's eyes, we are just as valuable as those entrusted with more. To conclude, let's consider the ultimate commendation, which shows no distinction based on the number of talents. In every case, the Master's praise is the same. Well done, good and faithful servant. Thou hast been faithful in a few things. I will make thee ruler over many things. Enter thou into the joy of thy Lord. Visualize this scene. George Whitefield, a man who preached to thousands at a time, stands before the celestial gates. His impact was vast, spanning England, Scotland, Ireland, and America. Thousands found faith through his sermons. Enduring scorn and persecution, he remained unshaken, a figure the world scarcely deserved. Now, watch as the Master greets him with acclaim, saying, well, good and faithful servant. Enter thou into the joy of thy Lord. See the grace that honors this valiant servant. But wait, who is this other soul approaching? A frail figure, known for a long battle with illness. She wasn't born into royalty or fame. She was a simple seamstress, working tirelessly, stitch by stitch, until her health gave way. Here she comes, her life cut short, but her spirit ripe for the harvest of heaven. What did she do to merit such a reception? She lived in obscurity, in a dimly lit room, in some forgotten corner of London. Her impact was not on crowds but on a single soul. She shared the story of Christ with a fellow worker, a lively young woman initially resistant to faith. Through patient persuasion, loving encouragement, and unceasing prayer, she ignited a spark of faith in her friend. Her days were not filled with grand sermons or public accolades. Instead, she spent them in a small room, sharing snippets of scripture, praying silently, and distributing tracts to anyone who would take them. Even in her final days in the hospital, she sought to reach others, asking fellow patients to read aloud, not for her own sake, but in the hope that it might touch their hearts. When she passed, her entry into heaven was as triumphant as Whitefield's. The Master's words to her were just as affirming. Well done, good and faithful servant. Her work, though unseen by many, was seen by the one who matters most. This brings us to an essential truth. The final commendation and reward will be equal for all who have used their talents well. If there are degrees of glory, they will not be based on the magnitude of our talents, but on our faithfulness in using them. Whether we have been entrusted with much or with little, the key is how we employ what we have. Let's take a moment to reflect on this. Our world often measures success by the scale of impact, the visibility of our actions. But in the spiritual realm, the metrics are different. It's about faithfulness, about doing what we can with what we have. The quiet, unseen acts of kindness and dedication are just as significant as the grand public gestures. In the end, whether we're called to lead thousands or touch the life of just one person, our service holds equal value. It's not the size of our stage, but the depth of our commitment that counts. So let us be encouraged to use our talents, however modest, in the service of others, to live lives marked by faithfulness and dedication, and in doing so know that our efforts are seen, valued, and will one day be rewarded with the ultimate commendation. Well done, good and faithful servant. Now, friends, a final thought. I've shared with you about the many within our denomination who continuously preach the gospel. I've considered bringing letters from these hard-working ministers to read to you, but sometimes I feel it might breach their privacy, so I refrain. However, there was one occasion when I did share their letters, and the resulting collection was almost twice as generous. It makes me wonder if, perhaps, a slight breach of etiquette might be justified if it means providing them with much-needed support. I can assure you, with all solemnity, that if there's real poverty to be found, it's among the ministers in the Baptist churches. And regrettably, part of this issue stems from the congregations themselves. There's a hesitancy to give, leaving these ministers in dire straits. Consider this. If Christ is to commend these humble preachers with a "well done" in the hereafter, does it make sense for his church to neglect them now, leaving them to survive on meager incomes? Now, brethren, if we anticipate Christ's final "well done," shouldn't we echo that sentiment today? And what better way to say "well done" than by ensuring these diligent workers are fairly compensated for their labor? Let's consider untying the hands that feed us spiritually and offer tangible support from our own resources. This way, we can help meet their pressing needs. Remember, there are likely a score of people whose well-being next year depends on what you give this year. Perhaps that thought will spur you into action. I recall a kind-hearted individual who, unable to attend one service, sent ahead their contribution with a message. "I can't be there, but please add my contribution to the collection. And I hope, if there are those who aren't present today but will be next week, they won't forget this crucial collection. This cause is particularly dear to my church and me. In our world today, where we often focus on our own needs and desires, the plight of these dedicated ministers can easily be overlooked. But their commitment to spreading the gospel, often under challenging circumstances, is a testament to their faith and devotion. They serve not for wealth or recognition, but out of a deep sense of calling. Yet how can we, as a community of believers, stand by and watch them struggle? Isn't it our duty, our privilege, to support them in their mission, to provide them with the means to continue their vital work without the constant worry of financial hardship? As we reflect on our own blessings, let's not forget those who labor on the front lines of faith. Let's show our appreciation not just with words, but with actions that truly make a difference. Let's be the hands and feet of Christ, extending generosity and support to those who have dedicated their lives to serving Him. In doing so, we embody the very essence of the gospel we profess to believe. We become a living testament to the power of faith in action. And in supporting our ministers, we not only bless them, but enrich our own spiritual journey, strengthening the bonds of community and fellowship. So, let's take this opportunity to give generously, to invest in the work of the gospel, and to ensure that those who minister among us can do so with the peace and security they deserve. In this way, we too can hear the Master's "well done," knowing we've played our part in the grand narrative of faith and service. Thank you, my brothers and sisters. May God bless you all.